A tense moment unfolded in the skies over Europe. On September 19, 2025, 3 Russian MiG-31 fighter jets flew over the Baltic Sea. This was not a routine flight. According to NATO officials, the jets crossed into the airspace of Estonia, a NATO member nation. The incursion did not last long. NATO forces, part of the Baltic air policing mission, scrambled their own jets to respond. Within 12 minutes of detection, Allied aircraft intercepted the Russian MiGs. They then escorted the Russian fighters out of Estonian airspace and back toward international territory. The incident ended without any shots being fired, but it immediately sent ripples of concern across the continent and the Atlantic. This event is significant because it involves a direct violation of a NATO country's sovereign territory. Airspace is an extension of a nation's borders. Flying military aircraft into another country's airspace without permission is a serious breach of international law. For NATO, an alliance built on the principle of collective defense, such an act is viewed as a direct challenge. It forces the alliance to react and demonstrates a willingness by Russia to test NATO's alertness and its rules of engagement. The speed of the NATO response showed that its systems are working, but the incident itself has raised the political temperature in an already tense region. The immediate aftermath was filled with strong words from European leaders. They did not see this as an accident. Kaja Kallas, Estonia's former prime minister, and now the EU's top diplomat, labeled the action an extremely dangerous provocation. Ursula von der Leyen echoed this sentiment. She stated that the flight further escalates tensions and promised that the EU would respond to every provocation with determination. These statements signal that political measures, including economic sanctions, are being prepared. Estonia, the nation directly affected by the incursion, responded with a mixture of diplomatic procedure and clear, firm warnings. The country's leaders made it very clear they considered the event a grave matter. Margus Tsahkna, Estonia's foreign minister, used social media to highlight the seriousness of the violation. He pointed out the hypocrisy of Russia undermining UN principles while holding a permanent seat on the Security Council. Hanno Pevkur, the Estonian defense minister, spoke about NATO's readiness and added a crucial detail about potential for forceful reaction. As reported by the Kiev Independent, Pevkur said if forced to use the last resort, the use of force, there was readiness for that as well. This was the first official hint that shooting down a violating aircraft is an option, a significant shift in public rhetoric. Estonian Prime Minister Kristen Michal reinforced this message. In an interview, he confirmed Estonia has clear rules of engagement, including procedures for shooting down violating aircraft. So that there is no doubt, we do have the capability to do what is necessary in our airspace, together with our NATO allies, Michal declared. He added the Russian pilots had ignored warnings and had the chance to leave earlier, implying deliberate, sustained violation. Perhaps the most blunt warning came from Marko Mikkelsen, chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee. He posted a message that simply said, 17 seconds versus 12 minutes. Next time we're doing that, if you know what I mean. This references a past incident involving Turkey and signals to Moscow that Estonia's patience is wearing thin. The next violation may not end with an escort, but a shoot-down. Rapid, decisive force. The flight of 3 MiG-31S into Estonian airspace is not an isolated event. It is part of a broader, increasingly concerning pattern along NATO's eastern flank. This suggests a coordinated strategy by Moscow to test the alliance's defenses and resolve. Earlier in September, Poland reported 19 Russian drones entered its airspace, forcing Polish forces to shoot some down. Days later, Romania reported a Russian drone near the border with Ukraine. Zelensky called it an obvious expansion of the war by Russia. These events continued. After the Estonian incursion, NATO jets scrambled over the Baltic Sea to intercept a Russian Il-20M reconnaissance plane, an aircraft built for intelligence gathering, flying without its transponder and not responding to communications. Analysts call it classic strategic probing, Moscow testing different points along the NATO border. Each incident provides valuable data on response times, rules of engagement, and political unity. By repeatedly pushing boundaries, Russia aims to find weaknesses and normalize its aggressive presence, hoping to desensitize NATO over time. The precedent exists. In 2015, Turkey shot down a Russian Su-24 in just 17 seconds after it violated Turkish airspace. Despite Putin's initial fury and threats of consequences, Russia ultimately chose not to escalate into direct conflict. However, the context is different now. Russia is engaged in a massive war of attrition in Ukraine, potentially making Putin's reaction unpredictable. The recent series of Russian aerial incursions has pushed NATO to a critical decision point. Leaders across the alliance now face a fundamental question: how to stop these provocations without starting a wider war. The path forward is uncertain, with several possible outcomes. Estonia has invoked NATO's Article 4, requesting consultations on this security threat. This formal mechanism brings the issue to all 32 member states for discussion, assessment, and planning. It is a step toward building consensus on how to proceed. This is the second time in weeks that a NATO member has used Article 4, after Poland did the same following Russian drone violations. One possible outcome is enhancing the current strategy, increasing NATO fighter patrols, reducing response times, and issuing clearer warnings. Diplomatically, the alliance could push for more severe economic sanctions through the EU. This approach prioritizes de-escalation and containment, avoiding direct military confrontation. But it runs the risk of being perceived as weak by Moscow, potentially inviting continued testing. A second possibility is adopting the harder line advocated by Estonia and the Czech Republic. The alliance could agree on new, stricter rules authorizing the downing of hostile aircraft that violate airspace and refuse warnings. This would send an unmistakable message of deterrence. However, it would place NATO and Russia on hair-trigger alert. The first enforcement could trigger unpredictable and rapid escalation. The final factor is the position of the United States. As the most powerful member of NATO, its stance is critical. U.S. President Donald Trump was asked directly if America would aid the Baltic states and Poland if Russia continues to escalate.
Yeah, I would.
This affirmation provides crucial reassurance to allies on the front line. It also serves as a direct warning to Russia that its provocations are straining relations with Washington. The question remains, is Russia's behavior a calculated test of that commitment, or a sign of desperation from a power bogged down in a costly war? Czech President Petr Pavel supports the tougher stance, saying violating airspace justifies shooting down such aircraft. Pavel revealed that when he asked Russian ministers about these provocations, they answered, "Because we can." Pavel warns that without maintaining unity, what's happening in Ukraine and the Baltic could eventually happen to all NATO members. The world is now watching, waiting to see who will blink first. The choices made in the coming days will likely define Europe's security landscape for the foreseeable future. There is no easy answer, and the stakes are incredibly high for everyone involved. NATO faces a critical moment in how it handles Russia's continued provocations, with the next Russian violation potentially triggering a far more decisive response.